Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my rankings for the Booktube Prize semi-finals Fiction Group B. This is the third round that I have judged for the Booktube Prize. This is a prize that was started by Robert of Barterhoords and is where we come together as booktubers and book reviewers and figure out what we believe is the best book of the last year of fiction published in America between certain dates. I will send you over to Robert's channel to get further information, and I will also be leaving links to my previous videos in the description. I was pretty glad with the books I received to judge for this round because I'd already read 4 of them, so only needed to read 2. And I'd taken one of those books out of the library before all of these shenanigans. Thus, I only had to purchase 1 book this time, which means I feel like I saved money. As I have discussed some of the books previously, I probably won't be going into as much detail about them today. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to run through each of the books in alphabetical order before giving you my rankings. I might not review them as in-depth as I have done previously, simply because I have talked about them before. The books in this round were A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier, The Night Tiger by Yancey Choo, The Innocence by Michael Crummy, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Lefteri, and The Dutch House by Patchett. If you want to see what I thought of A Single Thread and The Dutch House, then I reviewed and ranked these for the first round of the prize, so I will leave a link to that video below. I previously read The Beekeeper of Aleppo for the quarterfinals. I reviewed Girl, Woman, Other independently, which means I only have 2 books to review today, and so I will do those in alphabetical order before getting into my rankings. So the first book is The Night Tiger by Yancey Choo. This book is set in 1930s Malaya and tells 2 separate stories that are going to converge. The first being of this young boy whose master has died and has set him the task of returning his severed finger that he lost however many years earlier to his body so that his spirit isn't left roaming the earth for years after his death. The next story is of Ji Lin, who is an apprentice dressmaker who is dancing at night to pay off her mother's gambling debts. And something happens and she ends up embroiled in this mystery with the first character. Before I recorded this video, I did watch Sean the Book Maniac's reviews and rankings of these books. And in his review of this book, he mentioned how this is a YA novel, and I wouldn't disagree with him. I think that this book is very much written in a style that would appeal to young adult readers as well. It's accessible. I didn't hate it, and it ended up going quite high up in my estimations, but that might also be because so many of the books that made it into this round are books that I previously disliked, but I will talk about that when I talk about my rankings. What I liked about this book is the aspect of learning about a new mythology, new style of spiritualism that I didn't know much about. There was this emphasis on numbers and the way that people had ideas about what that meant for a person. There was a lot about names in here. Unfortunately, I do believe that that might have been towards its detriment because I felt as though the author was trying to explain away certain coincidences that happened far too often in the book. At the end of the day, though, I do believe that this is something like the bog standard murder mystery. Had this book been 200 pages shorter, with an unnecessary romantic subplot cut out entirely, then I feel as though I would be discussing it in a better fashion. Now, for the most part, I found it fast, but just because I read a book quickly doesn't mean that the experience was enjoyable. It's very predictable because it's very formulaic, and whilst it is fast-paced, I felt as though I'd seen every single character before, and it was a nice enough journey, but it's not necessarily something that I would revisit. I don't feel as though the characters were that well formed at all, and you just had to accept them as who you were told they were in the beginning. And then there was this mention of spiritualism and something to try and perhaps explain away, like I say, the coincidences. You might be surprised by my ranking of this book, how I've talked about it, but remember, that now I have judged 3 rounds of the Booktube Prize, and in every single round, I have mostly disliked the books that I've read. And this one, I will say, was a nice palate cleanser because it's so fast-paced. It didn't take much thinking about, but because it didn't take much thinking about, I have found it the slightest bit forgettable. And perhaps if I had recorded a review months ago, my thoughts on this one would be completely different as to how they are now. Next, I read The Innocence by Michael Crummy. This book sees Ada and Everard, 2 young children whose parents have died. They live in this very remote island away from the main coast, and people have to visit and bring them food. They catch and kill fish, and they exchange that for food to help them get through the year. I felt as though the author wrote in an almost poetic sense, but I did find it a bit dreary and tiresome. I did find myself having to rush through the book because even though it is quite a short book at under 300 pages, I found it a bit of a slog, and sometimes as though I was wading through treacle trying to find any sort of meaning. At the same time, this is another book that I found predictable. I thought that most of what had happened in this story we have seen done before, and I don't just mean because of the biblical references, because indeed I didn't notice them until I just read a blurb by Emma Donoghue as I tried to rediscover these characters' names. Any story about people trying to survive in the wilderness has certain beats that they are going to hit. I just didn't like that. I didn't like this sense of predictability. At the page 50 mark, I turned to my dad and I said, this is what's going to happen in this book. And 230 pages later, I was correct. Everything I thought was going to happen did happen, because whilst this book has a very literary, poetic tone in terms of style, in terms of substance, it's not giving us anything we haven't seen before. I will be talking about spoilers now. A lot of people have mentioned the incest within this story. I could see that coming from a mile off. I don't mind that it was in here, but it did feel like this shocking thing added to try and create something different from the overall story that we've seen before. I can understand why it happened. I can understand the way that Michael Crummy led the characters to this point, because the characters have never experienced or understood anything different. I can imagine how it must feel to lead this very solitary lifestyle, but I also felt that it fed into many tropes we've seen before. We have mention of possible cannibalism, we have mention of bears and hunting bears, and obviously these characters have to hunt to survive. And perhaps people who really enjoy this sort of fiction where they're reading about people finding themselves in the wilderness and learning to gain some sort of knowledge of the world whilst they're out there, maybe people will like this book more than I did. But I honestly felt like I was just getting the same story I've seen in any Western, just this time it's focused on 2 children who are on their own. This was one I was prepared to like. Originally, I thought that this was going to be the second book in my rankings, and I'm disappointed that it isn't. With that, we move on to my rankings. Having read 4 of these books before, I already knew where they were going to fall, because when I read them previously, I did not like them. Coming in at number 6, we have The Beekeeper of Aleppo by Christy Lefteri. This book surprises me that it has made its way into the final round of this prize, and it'll be just my luck if it wins. This is another predictable novel, and to borrow a word from Sean the Book Maniac, who finally made me understand how I felt with this book, it's manipulative. The writer crafts in a certain way that she wants the reader to feel certain types of emotions, and she is going to tell you what you should feel, when you should feel it, and rather than allow the characters to be fully formed human beings, they are just tools for her to explain how difficult it is for refugees. And I still believe that the writer should have created some sort of non-fiction account from her experiences rather than create what is essentially, to me, just more trauma porn. Then we have The Dutch House by Anne Patchett, and this is at number 5 simply because I do believe it is slightly more literary than The Beekeeper of Aleppo, but rich people doing rich people things is never going to be my bag. I think that Patchett gets a buy every time she creates something, despite the fact that she isn't really the best writer in the world. I find her prose pretentious, and I know there are so many readers who appreciate her style of writing. I'm not one of them. Next, we have The Innocence by Michael Crummy. Similar to Patchett and a lot of these other books, this is just because of the predictability of the story. The lyricism and poetry of the language just didn't save it for me. I felt nothing throughout. Then we have A Single Thread by Tracy Chevalier. I really thought that I was going to love this at the start of this year. This cosy, nostalgic story that was going to be about women between the two wars, but it wasn't in the end. This was just a story about bell ringing and embroidery, and it should have just been serialised in The People's Friend because it's barely literary and the historical quality just comes to her brother saying old girl every now and then. This should have been a BBC TV drama released during winter for people to watch in the run-up to Christmas, and they would have loved it. But as a book, it fails. Next, we have The Night Tiger by Yancey Choo. The reason this sits at number 2 is simply because I preferred it to the other 4 books that I disliked. I quite liked the mystery element, if I'm being honest. Whilst I wouldn't read this book again, I would definitely read something from the author in future, perhaps a few books down the line when they've properly honed their craft. Which means at the top of this list, we have Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, and nobody is more surprised by this than me. A few months ago when I released my video talking about this, I talked about how I disliked how every single person in this story only had a complete story once they'd found their person. I don't know whether it's because I loved Mr. Loverman so much, but reading that gave me a new respect for Girl, Woman, Other and what the author was trying to do. I feel like I could go back and reread this book. I feel like upon a second read, I would definitely get more out of it than I did the first time. I think that perhaps I need to throw some newfound prejudices aside about what makes a novel in 2020 and just enjoy it for what's there. For the most part, when I first read this, I felt as though each chapter was like somebody's obituary, and it was just giving us the key points in their life that leads them to the final scene. And I'd be interested to see how I feel. Out of all of these 6 books, this is the one I feel the most happy about moving forward to the final round. And the 3 books that made it through from my round this time were The Beekeeper of Aleppo, which I'm not the happiest about, A Single Thread, which seems to have chosen to haunt me this year, and Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. The other 3 to have made it through are Lanny by Max Porter, Women Talking by Miriam Toews, and 10 minutes 38 seconds in This Strange World by Elif Shafak, which is the only book that I have to read of this list, and I own it already. Therefore, I might already know how I'm going to be ranking these books, and I think that if you've watched any of my Booktube Prize rankings videos this year, then you might get a clear sign of how I will be ranking these books as well. However, do know I'm also planning a reread of Women Talking, because I think I might have missed something with that book, and it's been weighing on my mind since the first round of judging that maybe I misunderstood it, and maybe I don't need a book to have major plot points and story, and maybe I can enjoy the writing and recognise that something is perhaps more subtle than I first noticed. Strangely enough, I've actually enjoyed this round of the Booktube Prize, and I don't know whether that's just because I only had to read 2 books for it. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. Were you upset by the way the judging went this round? Would you have liked to see different books make it through? I know that I am still somewhat upset that Patsy didn't make it through last round. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.